All right, back at the water cooler, and I am so excited. The conversation was already started before we hit record. I've got two incredible powerhouse women, and it is fortuitous that I have them because our conversation is about how do I get a mentor when I'm a managing director? But more on that. We've got two women who have got corporate experience who are now doing their own thing. They get this subject. Julie, welcome back. Julie is a former Fortune 100 CIO, if you missed that in a prior water cooler, and she's a diversity, inclusion, and culture consultant, and a ferociously prominent woman in tech after 35 years of, I want to say, being a woman in tech, still a woman in tech, but all of that stuff. So welcome back, Julie.
Thanks, Kelly. Glad to be here.
And my dear friend Joya, so good to have you here. Joya's face may look familiar to some. She's a former business news anchor reporting from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange and all of that. And she is a founder of a women's leadership platform and really focuses on supporting women executives and founders. So there we go. As I said, I have ferocious experts here on the subject personally and in the work they're doing now. So as folks may know, or if they don't know, let me remind you, these questions come in. I am not making this up. This landed in my inbox. I'm in a director level position. How do I find a mentor? Joya, you're nodding away. No, Julie's like probably biting her tongue, but you're nodding away. What's hitting you with this question? Let's dive in.
So, you are catching me just as I'm coming off of one of my weekly peer mentoring calls. And that is what I'm going to invoke as advice here. I think that your most powerful mentor is your peer, and maybe even more than one peer when you are at this level. Now, that means that person also has to fit into a couple of different buckets, which is that, do they have similar experience? Are they in the same industry? Can they commit to meeting with you at a regular cadence? Are they even interested in that level of personal development or growth? Are they going to be brutally honest with you and be that sounding board in a way that maybe someone who's just a people pleaser isn't going to be? And how have they succeeded? So I think that those are some of the things that you can engage a peer mentor group, because you're going through the challenges together. Kelly, you met my colleague Meghna on Friday night when we went to the ballet. She's on the partnership track at PwC. She's currently a director, but she has been placed in this leadership program. And that's exactly what they're doing, is they put her in a group of four, a pod of four, and those women are sort of shepherding each other through the process of getting to partner, as opposed to looking to some, person that's higher up that might be infinitely busier to help them get there.
Yeah. I love that you, right from the start, go to the peer mentor, because I think I bashed that one over the head. Julie, what was your first thought when you heard that question? And I said, Julie, you must come to the water cooler again and talk about this.
Yeah, I feel like this is like one of the most common questions that I received from people as they were going through their career. And I've mentored a lot of people through their careers and still am mentoring. And, first of all, I think like being on the other side of that is very important, like a culture of mentorship, and that people are willing and open to do it. And I think most people are, really. I think that's one of the things that's underappreciated. I think a lot of times people think like, well, someone that's more senior than me, I'm already at the director level, they must be a senior director, managing director, partner, they won't have time for me. But I think most people can take on a few, they can't do a number of people, but they certainly can do that. And so I think there's an underappreciation for that. I often tell people to think about what you want to achieve from a mentorship. Like, you have to define what it is you want from a mentorship. It's not like you're just going to randomly connect with a person and say, mentor me. You have to kind of have something in mind, an outcome that you want. Joy's example was someone who's on partner track and wants to know what it takes to be a partner. It may be, you feel like you're great at in my field, right? I'm great at the technology. I'm not so good at the like relationships with my business partners. And I need to get better at how do I, work with the business. Well, then who do you identify that does that well? And go with that specific question. Like, hey, I see you as someone who's really great working with the business customer. I feel like it's something I need to develop. Would you mind working with me over some period of time on that particular topic? And I think that's the most successful mentorships are when you have a clearly defined objective and you seek out someone who has qualities that you're trying to develop in your own career. And you may have you may have more than one mentor because there are people who have different qualities that you're trying to develop. And so no one mentor is going to probably fill your entire bucket of things that you need to develop.
So many important points. It's it releases and Joy, I'll jump in. It's like releases the burden of someone saying, I want to be your mentor. And what we hear in our heads is someone is now going to like suck my time versus someone has thoughtfully asked for my expertise and I can give that. And that like breaking that barrier. Joya, what were you thinking?
I have two follow-up thoughts, one to Julie's point and one to your point, Kelly. Specificity. I think you touched upon that, Julie. I remember as being a journalist, I would get pitches every day from people. Someone would be like, hey, I have this great new diet I want to tell you about. Well, if you did even the nominal amount of research into my profile, you would only see Joya standing on the floor of the stock exchange, by which you would also deduce that I only do business news. Why haven't you done the nominal amount of research to understand what I do and that health news is not what I cover? So I think that it's an immediate turnoff if someone is coming to you saying, please mentor me, and you haven't done like just at least a LinkedIn search to see what swim lane that person is in. What's their zone of genius? So I think that level of specificity, one, as to why you are reaching out to this person, and two, doing a little bit of, for lack of a better way to put it, ego stroking. I saw that you wrote an article about AI the other day, and what really resonated for me is how it touches my everyday life. Then go into the ask. I think that just showing that you have the ability to really drill down on who this person is and why you're asking them to be your mentor is a step that's often missed. And then to your point, Kelly, I think it's okay to have a board of mentors. When I left being on TV and had to jump into entrepreneurship, just because I covered business news on TV did not mean that I knew how to run a business. And so I really made a list of all of my fears: customer service, technology, salary benchmarking, how do I run a networking group? And then listed a person's name next to each of those fears and made those people my best friend, because I need to be able to call them at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep about something, and they're not going to be like, who is this crazy person? I
was gonna say I should have introduced, because if technology was fair, I should have introduced you to Julie before. But if you're making calls at 3 a.m, maybe it's a good thing I didn't. But anyway, I digress.
For many years, I was up at 2:30 for news, so it was my natural wake up time. So sometimes I still wake up at 3 a.m. because the fear of God gets drummed into you, because you might oversleep and not show for that broadcast. But I think that it's important that you make that person your best friend, because you need to be able to call them and they need to pick up that phone.
Yeah. Julie, what are you thinking?
Well, I was just thinking also, one of the things that I think people sometimes make a mistake when they're looking for mentorship is they always want someone just like them. And I think that's great, right? Like that person you can call, that friend that's going to be affirming is always a good thing to have. Like someone who you can really feel like is your friend, is going to tell you the truth about something. But you also need people that are different than you. And when I look back at my own career, some of my best mentors were people who were radically different than me. And they also had something that was enriching for me, right? That's why they were a great mentor for me, because they were pushing me against the boundaries that I had established for myself, where places where I wasn't as proficient and needed something from them. And so I think that sometimes this, women having women mentors is amazing, right? It's very comforting, and you can relate to a lot of the same challenges in life that you might, run into in your personal life or in your business life. But having people who have achieved power positions and have something different than what you are to offer you is really an important person to put into your mentorship board. I like
yeah, exactly. And I'm going to say that, our brain loves to go to the place of comfort because, you pattern match because it's easier for our brain. It needs to work less. And this thing likes to, well, it likes to stir up problems, but it likes to conserve energy. And I think part of what we're getting to in terms of understanding your fears, making that fear list, or making that I want to learn list, or I'm on this track, what are the things I need to improve list, then enables you to create the specificity that enables you to take that step into having a conversation with someone who doesn't look like you. And without unfolding it that way, we're sort of thinking, well, why would that person mentor me? I don't have anything to talk to them about. What would I ask them? I wouldn't know what to ask them. And if you're like, but no, if you've done this work and made this list, tell me your reactions to that kind of one in terms of how we can then get into conversations with, and create a diverse board of directors, or a diverse personal board of directors, a personal group of mentors around us.
I think there's a step before that. I have a gal in my mastermind who's currently the director of public affairs for one of the big consulting firms. She wants to be chief marketing officer by summer. And I asked her, well, why is, the top brass pushing back on that? They're like, well, they think that's too aggressive. And I was like, clearly there is something standing between who you think you are and how you are seen. So how do you bridge that gap? I believe in doing a bullshit audit. And this is something I learned from Brian Serhant, who is a top broker here in New York City. And he talks about this. A bullshit audit is you have 5 or 6 people that you go to and you ask them, what is your impression of me when I first walk into the room? What do you think that I do that is just really just totally undermining my authority? And in his case, he tells this story about the fact that he's tall, he's like 6'5". And so he always walked slouched over to minimize his height. But when he was sitting at a table across trying to do a big deal, it made him look like he wasn't the authority figure that he is. And so who is it in your life that you can go to that'll be brutally honest about where you show up and how you show up, and bridge the gap between how you think you're being shown up? There's a phrase that eludes me. I saw it in a movie the other day. There's the way you see yourself, then how do others see you?
Yes. I would say Carla Harris has a great video. It's from her. She shares it in her Makers Women video where she did the bullshit audit, and her boss, people said, people don't think you're tough enough. And so she's like, fine, I'll talk tough. And she's like, I'll be tough. I'll show them I'm tough. And she dropped that language in there when someone would ask, hey, Carla, this person would like a feedback on their PowerPoint. She'd say, well, tell me about this person. I give harsh criticism. I'm really tough with my criticism. Are they going to be able to take it? So she threw that language in, and to cut to the chase, where she knew she had succeeded, she was coming around the corner one day, back when we were in offices, and the people she was meeting with couldn't see her yet, but she could hear them. And the manager director was like sweating with his minions, and he's like, have we got this all together? Because Carla's tough. Success. So how do you change this? Anyway, go ahead, Julie. Joya, I saw your figure there.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think the important piece of that, though, is that when you go, first of all, it takes a certain amount of cojones to go and ask people to do this, but you also have to go in with a growth mindset. Like, this is an opportunity for me to grow, as opposed to immediately getting back on your haunches and being defensive, because then the exercise is lost on you.
Yeah, exactly. Go, Julie.
No, I was just thinking, your question about how do you actually open the door, right? That's the thing that I think people find very awkward. And I think you're right. If you've done your homework, and look, I was not always good at this. And there was a point in time where I had an amazing boss, and I would love us to talk. We'll circle back. We should talk about the difference between mentors and coaches and mentors and sponsors.
Yes.
But because they are different. But my boss he was a coach. He was the classic sponsor coach type of boss. And he told me, Julie, you are not doing enough networking. You need to get out. People need to know your talent. It's holding you back. And he literally put in my performance review that I needed to develop relationships with 2 of his peers in the next, review cycle. And it was in my like performance review, so it had a whole new level of like requirement. And so that was this like awkward, like, how do you open that door? How do you, with your peers? So someone, a level up from me. And I did my research and I found what were these people known for? What were they good at? What was their thing? And there was one particular gentleman who was really good at strategy. He was new to the company. He was better at strategy work than anyone else. And I was, in a role where I felt like developing a tech strategy was important. And so I literally wanted to learn from him about, how to get better at doing strategy work. And so it was just a very natural opening if you know what you want from that person and you're genuine about it. I think that genuineness is super important too. And then he was more than happy, let's go to lunch. And he showed up with his PowerPoint to show me about, how to develop strategy. And so I think those particular asks that you have of someone is the way you open the door. And like I said, most people, unless they're just really truly slammed and they've already taken on 3 or 4 mentors, they'll do it. They'll spend time with you.
Right. And they may have been like one lunch. Like, why does mentorship have to be I want to say a lifetime relationship? It could be an hour-long relationship and you got what you need. Just so in case anyone is finding us in a stream right now, this is what we're talking about. But Julie, you raised a really important point. Let's go back to it. And Joya, chime in. What's the difference between like the boss / coach, sponsor, and the mentor? And how do we be thinking about what is the relationship we want rather than just all dumping it under this category of mentor? So Julie, talk us through your thoughts on the differences.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you just said it, right? Mentorship relationships are usually transient, right? They're for a point in time. Now, you may develop a friendship and a relationship through that sticks around for a long time in your career or even in your life. I mean, I'm still mentoring people that I started mentoring years ago. They call me when they're just trying to make hard decisions, right? But they tend to be more for a specific asks. And we are asking that person to just share their expertise with you, their learnings, their insights. And you're not expecting really anything more from that. And it's kind of tends to be more one way. The mentee is the receiver of goodness and the mentor, although they almost always get something from it. I find my mentor relationships very rewarding. They tend to be more transient if what you really want is someone who's going to stick with you and advocate for you and open doors for you and give you opportunities and let people know that you should have that next promotion, then what you're really looking for is a sponsor.
Right.
And those tend to need to happen a little bit more organically, but they can develop. And that's a really different level of relationship that takes multiple years because you're really looking for someone to help you progress through your career. And so that's not going to happen in a lunch or, in a couple months of mentorship.
Right. Someone sorry, Joy, I was going to say a sponsor is someone who needs to say, I am going to take my reputation and put it on the line for you. Exactly. And it may be someone that comes out of the blue, or it may be someone you've worked with, or just someone who's like, hey, I'm going to look good if I promote this person. Anyway, Joya, sorry, go in.
Well, I was saying a mentor is talking about you when you're in the room. A sponsor is talking about you when you're not in the room. Right, and that is the quickest way that I dispel that for other people is the difference between a sponsor and a mentor. And I think a part of that bullshit out is what are people saying about you when you're not in the room? I think that's a worthy inquiry. Like, how do they associate you or what do they associate you with? My favorite story about this is Alfred Nobel, when he read his obituary, one morning when he woke up and saw that he was the doctor of death because he had invented dynamite. He was like, well, first of all, he wasn't dead. Second of all, it was a misprint in the paper. But third of all, this was an opportunity for him to totally change his public persona. And that is when he established the Nobel Prize. And that is the thing that we know him for today. But if you don't have that come to Jesus moment,
Yeah.
and have your obituary published prematurely, then how do you know that? The only way you're going to do that is by going to market and asking what other people are already associating you with.
Right. And what can you correct? What can you fix? Julie, thoughts?
No, I was just going to say, I have a gentleman who was my boss. He was just the guy I was referring to about putting this stuff in but he was so candid with me. I mean, he understood my strengths and weaknesses, and he was very candid with me. And he would just say, these are career limiting moves that you are making, or this is the way you're showing up to your business partners, and that's not going to work for you. And I'm going to help you with that. So I think that's the other thing is, I'm going to recognize when it's happening. We're going to come back and have a conversation, and I'm going to help you recognize that. And it was brutal. I mean, it's sometimes, hard to listen to those things, but people who are really trying to invest in you and put their own career and take risks for you to get you to the place that you're trying to achieve in your career, those are special people, and they don't come along every day. And when you find those relationships, you really want to foster that and be. And I think it's a two-way street, right? I think it's a little bit different, because what did he also get from me? He was my boss for 10 years, and, he got a lot of commitment from me and a lot of loyalty and a lot of hard work. And so he also got something in return for the relationship. And ultimately I succeeded him in his role, which was, what was sort of the goal of the relationship in that form.
That's awesome. That radical transparency is as a boss of mine used to say, who was also radically transparent. Like, here's what it takes to succeed, and here's what you need to do, and I'm going to support you, but let me tell you what it is, and I'm watching stuff up. He used to say he was like training his assassins. Exactly this, like make the people around him better than he was. And people used to question why he did this. He's like, do you see any of them pulling out their knives? Do you see any of them going to other firms and stealing the clients? No, we were ridiculously loyal because of that. We have to get you guys back to have a management conversation another day, but I was going to invite you back anyway. All right, just noticing the time on the water cooler. Any other thoughts on this question of today for this person who was really hoping how do they find a mentor? And,
Well, I actually want to push the question back to you and Kelly and Julie. When you are thinking about the traits of a good mentor, someone that's going to be very honest, brutally honest, how do you determine who that person is going to be? Like what sort of flares do they put up that let you know this person's going to be honest with me?
That they're authentic, that they have a persona of authenticity, that they are known for authenticity, that they're not a BS person themselves. you know those people, right? The people who are genuine and authentic and are caring about others and are invested in others, versus the people who are very much egocentric and do their own share of BSing. And so I think I have always looked for those people that they exude some authenticity, that that you're going to be able to have a candid and open conversation with them, and that they're going to respect you, and they're not, going to be talking to, you have the mentorship conversation and you're open and honest, and then they turn around and tell other people what was said in the conversation. I mean, that is not the kind of mentor you want. And so I just look for that authenticity, that caring, candid person who also has just genuine authenticity.
So I'm gonna start with the expertise and why I sought them out for the advice in the first place. And I'm not gonna have big expectations other than hoping I'm gonna get some useful information in that first conversation. Mm-hmm. And then based on that initial dialogue, if it's someone I don't know, because I agree with Julie, the first thing I'm gonna do between two people with the same expertise, if there's someone I have some good vibes about because of other people talking about them, then that might be the person I want to go to first. But if it's all right, I don't know this person, but they've agreed to talk to me because I've made a really precise ask. I want to see what's going to happen during that conversation and after that conversation. And just, like my expectation or my hope is they will give me an answer. If it leads to anything more, that's like the cherry on top of that, mentorship Sunday.
That's a good point, Kelly. They don't all work out, and being willing to just say, like, I got something from that, but this isn't something I want to continue being. And like, that's just call it, right? Just call it when it's not.
If you get, well, I think when it doesn't work out is when you don't even get the answer, right? You're like, well, I did all my homework. I asked them the right question. I followed the advice of somebody else, and well, that was a shit show. Like, and then you say, good, I don't have to waste any more energy on that person. But that to me is where it can like fall down and feel like a total waste. But you get an answer and you don't want to talk to them again, rock and roll.
Yeah, I think there's a missed opportunity there to talk about the fact that you can set a beginning date and an end date, a cadence at which you're going to meet. But I think that end date is just as critical, and going in with an agenda every time you're going to meet with that person. And then I love to send notes after. These are my takeaways from our session. Again, showing up as a mentee this is the difference between a good mentee and a bad mentee. I feel like a good mentee is going to say, well, this is my reflection back on our session and how I've processed things. I think that to me would be tremendous.
Oh yeah. That follow through and the follow up. I mean, I think it was absolutely critical because it'll turn a one-time meeting from a one and done, if it's one that you want to continue, to something that can feel more naturally growing into a mentorship, as opposed to something when you're going to be in a, like, we should talk 3 more times on this, kind of thing. All right. I'll give you both one more parting shot on this, and then we got to exit the water cooler. As I like to jokingly always say, we got to pretend like we're hanging out the water cooler and then go, shit, I got another meeting. All right.
Got to go back to work.
back to work. Julie, any final thoughts on this amazing conversation, ladies?
I mean, I can't really add anything more. I feel like the points that Joy just made about being responsible as a mentee as well are really important and perfect. I've had some situations where people ask for mentorship and then they are just never prepared. They cancel the meetings. They don't show up. They're not engaged. That's just, that's not the thing to do. So just be very responsible as the mentee as well. And you'll get great things from the mentors in your life. And there will be many of them over the course of your career.
Mentors want to help, but you be the driver and tell them where you're going with a relationship. Joya, any final thoughts today? Because you're dropping truth bombs left, right, and center.
I'm going to go back to the example of the woman who wants to be chief marketing officer. The next step I asked her to take was to go find a current chief marketing officer today and ask them, what are the 6 traits that the modern day chief marketing officer needs to have? And now go back into your career and tell me a story of a time that you were analytical, or tell me a time that you were a trendsetter, or that you were strategic, or that you were technology savvy. I think knitting those stories together with the traits that are the markers, the hallmarks of the modern day CMO is the next big favor that you can do for yourself.
Oh yeah. Mentoring. You know what? Mentoring yourself. We're looking outside. Sometimes, the hard work of getting what we want. Look in here. There we go. All right. This has been amazing. I cannot wait to have you back again for another conversation. We'll find something fun to talk about. But thank you for being so authentic, transparent, on point. Amazing. So appreciative.
Thank you.
Thanks for having
us.
us.
Let's do it again.
We will.